Well, it's 9 o'clock. In the back? Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. This is a Fort Myers Beach Management and Planning session. All members of the council are here. It's 9 a.m. It's Thursday, October the 7th, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a few items here to discuss this morning. The first, as always, is the Lee County update. I don't see anybody from Lee County here this morning. I don't know how much of an update we're going to get, but Roger, you don't have anything, do you?
No, nothing new from them other than you may have noticed on your way driving here this morning that they're beginning to put the perimeter fence on the Tops property for the purposes of relocating their trolleys to that property to free up the Seafarers property for use by us and others for construction staging. In terms of the project, for those of you on the south end, they continue to make progress. I believe the words that I'm interpreting what they're saying is they will be substantially complete by the end of the calendar year, but not complete. Which, I don't think that status has really changed. And to the extent that there are any constituent or property owner issues, those are worked out at a weekly meeting with them. We continue to have weekly meetings by Zoom with them, and sure that when we coordinate as best as we possibly can to minimize the disruption to everybody on the island.
I believe they'll be done by the end of the year. Been fortunate that we haven't had any storms in the project. Questions? Okay. Next item is we're going to move up to the move C up to B. Bay Oaks 60% design submittal presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The consultant has an engagement after this meeting and to help them make sure they get there on time. So. Here it comes.
Left a box of donuts back there too.
So what the delay is for.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Paul Benvey, project manager with DRMP.
Come on, Paul.
Carry this up. Okay, so just want to give you a quick rundown on Bay Oaks, where we stand. So this is Ryan Richards with RG Architects. He's the architect for the project, and he may be jumping in here if there's any specific questions about the building. All right, so quick update. We've submitted 60% plans. They've been reviewed. We've gotten some comments back. We are in the process of finalizing our ERP permit with South Florida Water Management District. We look to submit that towards the end of the month. And once that's rolling, we have about 90 days for review there. And then we can move into the final permitting set for Fort Myers Beach development order. All right, real quick, this is just a quick overview of the plan. There's a couple major items here. Everything to the west of the drive aisle going towards the recreation center is pretty much staying the same, including that small ball field there. And then everything to the east is being redeveloped for all intents and purposes. You can see the existing ball field behind the parking lot area there. We have a new building. We have room for an expansion building moving in the future. And then the large baseball field is being relocated. to the north, and it's really wedged in. We have wetlands to the north that we have to stay out of. We have the school's property to the east that we have to stay out of, and we're trying to minimize any disturbance to the east. So we're kind of shoehorned in there with the biggest ball field we can get. The blue area on the screen, this will be the final school's property once the land swap is finalized and fully executed. And then the red area down there is the parcel that was purchased years ago now. It will serve as the entrance to the park. Both of these are on fast tracks, so they're being developed. They'll be finished before the rest of the park. At least that's the goal right now.
While you have that broader shot up, any update? I think I remember Chelsea saying there were some challenges on the fitness trail around the whole property. Is that still the case, or is that still?
Yeah, so the fitness trail is tough. We can't. South Florida won't let us put a fitness trail through the wetlands because over time, even if it's crushed shell or a coquina, it actually acts as an impervious surface, which means when the water hits it, it runs directly off. That creates some issues for them. So our goal is to not define it and allow it to develop over time.
I think that's very diplomatic. So that being the case, but there would be potentially a space for someone if they wanted to walk around the circumference of the property?
Yeah, so around the outside, the northern edge there will be a berm that creates a delineation between the water that runs that's deposited on our property versus the wetland area. And so along the top of that, we can't show a coquina crushed shell path, but if it gets used that way, it's an open space in a park. No one's going to have a problem with that.
Very good, thank you.
Oh, now, as far as, is this like a water runoff management where you're supposed to put a berm there to keep the water from running right into the wetlands?
Yes, so we want to control the runoff. We have to treat the volume that comes onto the site, so that can be one of two ways. It's either 1 inch of rainfall. The volume would be 1 inch of rainfall over the entire site, or 2.5 inches over just the impervious areas. Right now, the controlling for us is the 1 inch over the entire site. You have a lot of open space, so that would control. And so we have to store that volume and then let that volume release over time through a control structure. The site has two control structures. One is adjacent to the left field fence line up at the very northern center of the picture there. And then there's another one it's at Gulf Beach Drive, around the canal area there.
Now, put some structure over that berm, like a boardwalk or something?
Over the berm, that would increase your impervious area again. So it could be done. We just would need to make sure we're treating it.
Boardwalk would be considered an.
Yes. Yeah. It's a time of concentration that when the water hits it, is it getting absorbed into the earth or is it running off somewhere and increasing it? So that is something we could look into. You have to look and see how that would work with the budget, though. We really wanted to try and fit that in there. For sure, boardwalks can go through wetlands. There's permit applications you can submit for that, and we can look into that if that's something you'd like to look into. Otherwise, it's the top of the berm would be dry. That's something that would not get wet. You'd be able to traverse across it without having your feet get wet. Whereas on the either side of that thing, it's a potential that would happen.
This is a little off topic, well, kind of, but has there been any talks with the Matanzas Past Preserve, people in the county to extend their boardwalks into the Bay Oaks property?
So we talked about that in the early stages of the project, and from what I understand, that was abandoned. I don't recall the exact reason why, but we're not pursuing that as a part of this project.
Counselor, yeah, we've expressed our willingness to work with them on that, but they haven't made any real serious interest in taking that concept forward.
So really quickly here, this is the improvements to the school that we have agreed to perform in exchange for the land. We are modifying the play court areas, adding a new one in because we're removing one, and we're also reducing in size another one. So we're getting a net decrease in impervious area, which is a good thing. We're adding some additional sidewalks to ensure that there's ADA compliance and getting the children from the school to the playground, which is the rectangular box there in the northeast quadrant. We're also going to be realigning and repaving the existing parking lot, removing their existing covered parking area and relocating it back onto their parking lot. This is done in order to make sure we have that circulation through the entire parking lot. There's new security gates that are there. Those will be worked out with the school district to ensure that it's open for use, public use outside of school hours, and will provide for additional circulation in that. And this is being fast-tracked due to time constraints associated with the land swap. Any questions on?
The land swap has been completed. All the documents have been submitted to the Lee County School Board's outside counsel, and there are some deeds that need to be ordered, but from our standpoint, we've finished all of what we need to do in order to consummate that land swap.
All right. No worries. Yeah, it's right on the cusp of being. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so this is the other red area. This is the entrance off of Estero. This is again a fast track thing. We just want to get this thing rolling. Show that monument sign down there at the southern end. You guys already have purchased the national fitness equipment. Right now, it's sitting in covered storage. It's in good shape still. I don't see why it wouldn't be. The equipment is made to be sitting outside, so it shouldn't be an issue there. Just to bring some prominent display of encouraging fitness right in the front of the park there. We're adding in a drive aisle. Right now it's a one-way in. I think we've discussed that ad nauseum. We've all decided that a one-way in is the way to go with a concrete pedestrian path coming in through that area. So we are working with Lee County to decide how the existing crosswalk will work at the crossing Estero. There's a lot of infrastructure that goes on there. There's a sanitary sewer manhole. There's a drainage structure. There's a school sign and flashing lights. So there's lots of little things that are going on there. We'll have to work with them to decide how that exactly will. The design right now is set up to allow entrance into the existing parking area next to the pool, and also will play well with the future design, which we can talk about here.
Oh, before you move on that, there's been a lot of discussion about, bike lanes and the sidewalks, and is there anything in there that would allow for space for not on the sidewalk for bikes to go in to eliminate any of that potential discussion?
So you mean a dedicated bicycle lane versus a pedestrian lane?
Yeah.
Well, there's a little bit of room in there. We can certainly add a feature there. We can widen the sidewalk. I don't think you're going to have a huge amount of traffic really going down the drive aisle. You can ride a bicycle on the drive aisle. Depends on how you'd like to see it.
Just a thought. I've been a lot of discussion about it.
And also now this fitness area, is that a placeholder, that block, or is that what it is? It's got to be a big square thing.
Yeah, so this is exactly what it looks like. I think it's 30 by 30 square for all intents and purposes, and it features 7 movements: push, pull, squat, all these different movements that you can do. And they have competitions. We imagine that maybe someday there'd be a large competition here, get a little bit of a draw to the area.
And it's not configured to be more linear to fit in that space.
I wish it was. Yeah, it looks to me that the pieces that we have are set up like this. We could work with them to see if there's a way to lengthen it out. What we've seen is through their whole brochures and everything, it's a set block. It's meant to go on exactly half of a tennis court, so they have it laid out in certain ways. So if you look, you see like circulation patterns that are inside of this thing that were developed by others. If you go online and watch the videos, you can see how people actually go through and use each one without running into each other. Any more questions on this area here?
I could just see, Paul, that Chelsea left, but I'll tell Roger, that, considering how limited that space is, those are that's an excellent exercise program on that fitness square. And where the pull-up, if you could go back to the slide, the pull-ups and the dip area is that a wall back there, or what?
Yeah, so I think it's like a 6-foot tall wall with, the pull-up bars are extending a little bit higher than that. And it says, it's emblazoned with National Fitness and things like that on it. I would imagine we could, look at adding some other graphics, some Town of Fort Myers Beach graphics in there as well.
It's tremendous. I'm wondering just how if I am looking at this slide here, how will we see this from the street, from Estero Boulevard? What will you be looking at the wall? How will it be structured or fit into that square?
It's a square, so we can rotate it either way. Either you could run parallel to the property line that runs deep in there. You may miss that as you come by from the east or from the west, but if we rotated it so that wall was on the back end, you'd have more visibility on it. It's really up to you how you'd like to see it. Or you could rotate it all the way around the back, that everything's facing away from it, and you could have signage there on the backside.
We probably want to think about that, because what you see from Estero is going to be really important to draw people into Bay Oaks, so think about that.
Yeah, we were, just so you know, Counselor, we were kind of contemplating the wall would be up against the adjacent private property. It sort of just help serve as a little bit of a buffer. It's a rental property, but still just to create a buffer. So it would be the backside, which means that, if you go back to this schematic, Paul, real quick. That means the core push, that front edge there, that would be the edge that's parallel to Estero.
And I think what would be the most aesthetically pleasing from Estero to draw people into Bay Oaks, but yeah, I don't have the answer, I'm just thinking out loud.
I think if you want to maximize the exposure from Estero from both ways, north and south, you would put the wall on the back of the property facing existing Bay Oaks, and people see it coming from both ways.
That was the discussion when this was first brought, when I was on BORCAB, when they came in and made the pitches. This could be set the way that you just said it, Mr. Mayers. Have the back wall towards the existing Bay Oaks. That's a 6 foot high. There's things that you could do on the back side of that, art, things like that, that could really be appealing.
Yeah, that's
to
exactly our concern, that things that could be done on the back side of that.
Well,
including overnight sleeping. So that's kind of why we kind of put it the other way.
I see hiding spot.
that makes
You
sense.
have to think like, okay.
All right, so the last thing to talk about really is the building
Paul, just-
itself.
sorry,
Go
Paul.
ahead, yeah.
Time on that national fitness area, you said that would be accelerated because the equipment's already here and the funding's already been procured. When could folks potentially expect to see that fitness area up and running?
So
Ballpark.
I'd have to lean on Chelsea to see exactly where she wants to put this into her schedule, but for what I understand, we have 9 months to get the schools portion done. I think that the goal was to fold this into that accelerated schedule, just to get a little bit more buying power for the town. And no sense in doing it in two separate projects as far as that goes. I don't know if Chelsea or Roger wants to comment on that, but I would say 9 months is pretty much the goal there.
So we have to work around, with some of the school portion, we have to work around the school schedule somewhat too. So we have 9 months and we have to work around the school schedule. So the way we're looking at it is by encompassing the project as putting the entranceway, we can do the parts. We kind of have to be off the school's property, but we can keep the contractor working. But generally speaking, once the 90% plans plus or minus are approved by the council, you can give us a go-ahead at that point to plow forward with us part of it, and we will.
I'm just curious. Thank you. Yep.
And just logistically, is you start the big construction projects, is this going to, I mean, this seems like a pretty obvious construction entrance and working on the building. Is that going to, access?
No, because this will be done before we start construction. Construction of the other segments will be the earthwork, and the infrastructure will be one project, and the building will be a separate project, and the field will be a separate project. So,
Then trucks that are coming in will be coming in through this, going out by the school.
all right, we may not put the final course of asphalt down till after the overall construction is done.
You said 9 month, when does that 9-month clock start for the school? Or is
Well,
it
we
already
were
started?
just discussing the timing of the, I don't know why that's doing that. Timing of the school's execution of the land swap is like, it's day, tomorrow kind of thing, so we're about on the clock, yeah. Do it, okay, so real quick, this is the first floor of that, of the building. It's mainly open space, circulation space beneath. The beige box on the lower end there is just the opening vestibule. Due to flood elevations, we needed to elevate this up significantly. I want to say it was a 13, elevation 13, 14. So it's going to be, it was going to be over your head anyway, so we just opened it up even a couple more feet. You know, the little amount that we're adding to the piles to pull them up is not a huge issue in terms of cost, but you do get a bigger open space beneath. I will say that some of these items may be value engineered out to try and get this back into the town's budget. We overshot the budget a little bit as we went through. We're seeing, as everyone knows, price increases for all materials and labor. So we're trying to get this thing back down into that $7 million budget.
How does like equipment get loaded onto the, can trucks go,
What kind of equipment?
let's say you're doing a concert on the
Okay.
stage or a play or something and you truck wanted to unload.
Yeah, hand trucks.
So the idea
Or
is that everything would be.
Yeah,
hand trucks,
there's no
forklifts.
vehicular access back there.
Yeah.
You could unload onto like a or some kind of four-wheeler at the parking lot and bring it.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, good morning, Ryan Richards, RG Architects. At this point, you know, it hadn't been a discussion that there isn't vehicular access to the stage. You would have to unload at the parking lot into like a gator or a hand truck and then drive it through. There are open aluminum gates to get through vehicles under the building, but it's not intended for.
Is there a fence to put in a door and?
It has a limited height, so pickup trucks could probably work. Larger than that, you're gonna start. I don't think it would be a huge. It's more about stabilizing the subgrade. You have more than a 4-inch slab underneath.
Well, let's look at that, and we'll send a memo out after these guys have a chance to think about that. And
On up the second floor for me. Again, it's a 13,000 square foot building footprint approximately. The gathering space in the middle is about 5,000 square feet, 5,500 square feet. Cab asked how many people could fit in that area. With all the divider walls open, with a dinner style setup with round tables and 8 seats per table, we were looking at about 200 people could fit in that area. If we went with a lecture style where there are no tables, the number increased upwards of 250 people. So this is what that looks like. Again, the green area in the middle is the area I was speaking of as the flexible space for gatherings. There are 2 other flexible spaces to the outside of the wings. One is meant for more quiet activities, and one's meant more for children and maybe get a little bit louder on that wing. which is the western wing. Then we've added some future proofing to this building so that that western wing will actually open up into a new building when that gets designed and built, just to allow circulation to come in through the front door of this building, meet with staff for security purposes, and then be able to traverse out to the new athletic building if and when that gets built. Any questions on this?
A little strange, maybe off the topic, but I'm just curious, with this new system, Roger and Amy, that we're getting for this particular, for the council chambers, is it at all portable? In other words, if we decided to have a large town meeting, or the county or the state wanted to have a public comment meeting on a particular issue, could we transfer this equipment temporarily over there to?
No, but we're contemplating a full sound system in there at some point.
In the new facility? Okay, thank you.
Switch back.
Is that included in that $7 million budget or no?
Well,
The audio system?
Yeah.
the answer is that we've said that that's the sort of the build budget, that's not the FF&E budget. That's where we are right now.
All right, so this is some renderings of the facade. We heard from council and from BORCAB that the idea on the exterior of the building, the facade, was to try to mimic the library, which is right across the street from this. And so that's kind of where we went with the design language. This is very similar to some of the other options we saw before, but it's a little bit more compatible with the other design. There you go. Yeah.
Is that, just as you go back one, what's that, is that brown area to the left, is that a ball field, or is that just,
Left.
yeah, just to the left center there, there's a kind of a brown square rectangular?
Okay, so that is where the new building will eventually go. We're just throwing some space holders in there at the moment. I think that is shown as tennis or volleyball.
Yeah.
Oh, there, yeah, so that's future pickleball, bocce ball, and court sports like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
The green area between the building and the trees and the, what looks like to be a square of clay, that's the future area for the future.
Okay, very good.
On the left hand, down at the third baseline.
That could be used for pickleball or bocce or anything in there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, depending on how far in the future that is, what you want to put on that area, you can put it, eventually it would, theoretically we get run out if you went forward and put the gym there, but you can put something there temporarily.
This is another angle from the front facade there. This is as you would walk in from the drop-off area. This is the side area where we just added some outdoor seating. Picnics could be used for gathering, could be used commercial capacity or just recreational. And this is the design of the amphitheater at the moment. To hear your comments on it.
What are the, those deals with the balcony there? Are those sound deals or are they protective? Or the balcony is there just above the platform?
It's both. We have a bit of a balcony to hide off of the main multi-purpose room, but we tilted some acoustical panels to try to push the sound towards the field. So in this type of situation, if you had an event on the stage, everybody would be sitting on the field. So we did some acoustical treatments just to kind of push that sound forward. We have an acoustic engineer in our budget and on contract, hasn't done a full analysis of everything we could do for it yet, but it's a starting point, kind of meeting the intent. The bottom half is hiding the balcony. The top half is just for acoustics.
Is there any way to access that stage from the field level? It looks like you'd have to, if for some reason you had to get somebody up there, you'd have to kind of go a ways or jump up there. That would hinder the.
Yeah, right now we have, kind of the backstop going right down to the stage level. There's that netting that interacts with it. You could bring out a modular aluminum ramp or something like that. You wouldn't want it there when a game is happening,
Right,
because, you know, someone will get hurt. But yeah, it depends on if it's 16 inches, but you could bring in an aluminum ramp.
What is that height from the dirt, to the top of that stage, the
I think
platform?
right there it's shown as 2 foot.
That's it, huh? Oh.
So the terrace, there's terrace in the front and a terrace in the back, and that's part of, if you're using those big rooms for a function, that's sort of a space for people to walk out, get out of the meeting room space if they want to have a private conversation, or on their cell phone, or whatever, you know, so those are like pre-event, mid-event, you know, congregational type spaces around the main space. We have one in the front and one in the back.
Can you just help me, because it's hard to tell 3D nature of this, so that there is a stage there, or is a temporary stage set up in the dirt? What, I can't really tell.
There's a stage built in between the columns.
Can you tell how deep that is? How deep the stage is? How many feet,
Front to back,
front to back? Just ballpark.
30 feet?
Oh, so it's
Oh,
pretty good
big.
size.
Yeah.
And then above the stage, then, those windows, do those open? Can people,
On the left and right, those are actually doors into the multi-purpose room. The middle windows right now, they're actually just fine.
I guess I'm wondering if there's a concert and somebody wanted to watch from a little higher elevation, maybe not from the stage or from the back. So I guess most people would be sitting in the field, won't they?
you can watch from the balcony if you want to.
And you say balcony, Roger, yeah,
You see right, that black thing, it's covered by the beige acoustical panels, but that's a balcony right there.
really? That'd be nice, though, for some folks to be up there, yeah. Okay, I didn't realize, I couldn't quite tell how the depth of that.
Yeah, if you want to like try to flash a mirror into the center field's eyes, you could do it from up there.
That's a balcony that people can actually go out there, though, right? They could
Yeah.
walk and sit out there? If there's handicap seating or whatever, people could go up there and just sit up there? Okay, very good.
Depending on the event, you may want sound booth, the controls out there, or the audio
Yeah,
system
yeah.
out there.
That was gonna be my next
To do
question.
that flexibility. Or,
Yeah.
Is this being constructed with, I mean, it doesn't show any sound or lights, obviously, but is this being constructed with conduit for future, being able to get lights in there, should there be permanent
Absolutely.
lights? I figured, okay.
Yeah. We would not be allowed to build this out, future-proofing it.
Yeah, isn't one of those windows where like the scorekeeper would be, or whatever, be operating out of?
inside, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where like the electronics for the scoreboard and the scorekeeper would be, someone calling the game or whatever would be out of that window.
And that's intended to be the control room, and it's also adjacent, if you turn sideways, to the large multi-purpose area, so it could function and control, either the side or any.
Okay. All right, there's another shot for you. I think that's it. So any other questions for us while we're here?
The big question is, do you have any idea, and you follow some things in the news, and the cost of lumber went through the roof and then it dropped, and now cost of energy is high. Any idea where we are compared to our $7 million budget?
Over.
Like, how over?
Probably somewhere between, I would guess, between 15 and 25%. Paul?
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, like you're saying, prices are changing, things are changing pretty dynamically. One of the things we're going to do is by breaking the overall project into sort of segments, is we bid it out as one project, we'd be paying a premium either to the people doing the site work or the guy building the field. If, say, it was a GC who got the job, who was building the building. So, try to minimize that, we're going to try to hire by a contract the field specialists, the site work specialists, and the building specialists directly, so that we don't have to pay 15, 20% premium for them to sub out the rest of the work.
Questions for Paul?
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thank you.
Actually, there was, Paul, since you're here, sorry, there was discussion at the board cab meeting about soccer fields. I don't know if Allison's had a chance to talk to you guys about
Yes.
that. Okay.
So, do you want to talk about it?
Sure, I mean, yeah, I know that they were asking about it, so I don't know if you can just touch on it a little bit.
Sure. Can you pull that back up? So we've talked about multi-purpose field, right? And when you have dirt in the infield, it's kind of tough to play soccer on top of that. So we looked at we've done many iterations, and I think we can fit a U and maybe a U12 in the outfield of the large field. And then we can also put in two, multiple other smaller ones inside of that. And then we looked at potentially the smaller ball field. Maybe that gets completely repurposed into a soccer field. So that's over here. Because it's a weird shape, or it's got an outfield, it's got an arc to it. It's tough to fit a square or rectangular object inside of it. So we looked at that, and I think that the largest one we can fit in there is every soccer field size has a range. So there's no hard and fast true number until you get to high school, and then it's like 120 yards long by 100 yards wide or 90 yards wide. So it's a very big thing, and it's a little more regulated. In the smaller age groups, there's ranges, and they're trying to match the stamina and speed of a child and how many of them are out on the field at a time to the size of the field. So the small field there, we can fit in a U8 right as it sits. We start looking to demo the fence and the dugouts and the concessions and all that. We can start fitting that U10 size in there. So you could have one U10 inside of that. If you demoed the whole ball field, you could fit one U10, and then you can run with an alternate paint scheme, two U8s on the opposite direction. And I think on the big ball field, you can fit a U12. So you could have a pretty big swath of age group.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Take care.
two, good luck. Okay, next item is the lighting study. We're just gonna discuss this, we're not waiting for any,
That's correct.
Okay.
So, all the questions or emails that came in since the presentation by the consultant to the town were forwarded to the consultant, issued some supplemental information to try to address those questions. It's been provided to town council. So we're just really, seeing if you all are ready to kind of debate this and see if there's a consensus on how to move forward or not.
here to start this conversation? Oh, you're leaning in?
Sure, there's some things that really came out that were pretty decisive, I think, in the last presentation we had. And that's that there seems to be this credential approvals that have to happen. So we need FWC approval before we can get DOT approval, and we need to get the DOT approval before FP&L will consider certifying whatever we're recommending. And we were told in no uncertain terms that FWC would not consider anything but amber. So without that FWC approval, we won't get DOT approval, we won't get FP&L, and we won't get permitting from the county. So I think that it behooves us now to just narrow this down to what is possible, recommendation, and not spend too much time making recommendations that we can't do.
I think there's been an answer that hasn't been given yet when it comes to the FWC, in my opinion. If the lighting itself on Estero Boulevard, whether it's amber or non-amber, does not affect past the sand dunes, is FWC approval required?
This area is...
No one's answered that yet.
Well, yeah, they did, because they have maps say what areas require this kind of approval.
I understand that, and if the light coming from these light sources are shielded and do not affect those areas within that map, is FWC required to approve it?
I think the Public Safety Committee said they wanted one color, as I remember I don't remember the exact wording. And there's places where it just has to be amber.
Well, I think that everyone can agree that we need coverage needs to be the same no matter what it is.
Right.
And I think that's what you're referring to when you're
Right.
talking about the Public Safety
Right.
Committee. My fear is that if we back ourselves, at the end of the day, the decision is going to come down to the county. The county is going to make the final call on it, whether we just, whatever we want. If we back ourselves into a corner and only give them one option, we risk assuming the liability for that. I'm not sure that's something that the town is willing to do or wants to do. I think the best solution would be to give them the amber solution that we would feel comfortable with using, as well as a potential white source if it's approved, if everything can meet the requirements that it needs to meet, and let the county tell us which one they would like us to use.
I wouldn't be in favor of that. I think we need to go to the county and say, this is what we prefer. We need to be clear.
One thing I disagree with Dan, I don't think, this is a legal question for you, John. I don't think we ever assume liability for Estero Boulevard. Doesn't matter what we recommend that goes up there. We as a town do not assume liability for Estero Boulevard.
No, Estero Boulevard is clearly a county road. I think the secondary issue, or historically, since I have been your town attorney, when we have asked the county to coordinate or to enhance primarily something above and beyond what the county is going to do on county property as it relates to Estero Boulevard, landscaping is an example, the county says, yeah, sure. We have set aside X amount of dollars to do what we think, we need to do. If you want more, it's going to cost you more. It's above and beyond. And we're now going to transfer responsibility for these improvements to you. That is what the county has historically done. So the extent that there's a request to provide a different level of lighting than what the county has currently planned for Estero Boulevard as part of the improvements, I would not be surprised. I don't know for sure, but I would not be surprised the county is going to try and say, well, now you're responsible for, liable for lighting on Estero Boulevard, not the road, but the lighting.
So they would try to do that via an interlocal.
Interlocal.
It's kind of like a seatbelt paradox. You manufacture seatbelts that save lives, but if your seatbelt fails, you have a liability.
Essentially. So, and again, that is based upon past experiences that the town has had with the county when it comes to an enhanced level of service, for lack of a better description, as it relates to the Estero Boulevard project. And again, specific example is landscaping. They said, yeah, sure. Here's how much we had allocated to it. We'll give it to you. You want more? It's then on you. And oh, by the way, it's now your responsibility.
So just perhaps to give another real life example, those of you who remember when we had the pavers going between Times Square and Atlantic High, if there was a trip and fall issue at that location, that was the town's to deal with and resolve, and if there was liability to pay for, because their base level was concrete sidewalks. So more recently, some of you may recall, we were having so many issues with that we actually went in and removed all those and replaced it with concrete. And put it back basically the way it was to avoid that situation. So basically, whenever you do an enhancement when we do an enhancement, I believe the county's going to try to transfer the liability with it. If the county does the enhancement, then the liability remains with the county.
To add a step to this, though, John, just because someone tries to transfer liability doesn't mean a court says that that was effective. There's all kinds of cases where people have forced you to sign a waiver to use a specific facility, and then courts have later said, no, you can't transfer your liability. So I just want to make the point that just because they try to transfer the liability doesn't mean that a court finds that that's the case.
That is correct. However, if in fact there is a written agreement between the parties where there is presumptively that transfer of responsibility and liability, certainly we could argue that that's not an effective a waiver of our sovereign immunity and responsibility for the liability attached to that. It's a hard sell.
But John, just to be clear, when there's an accident or something, the party usually will sue the county and us, and then we will go to court
Yep.
and say, here's why it should only be the county. And I'm sure if there was a case where we accepted additional responsibility, they would say, well, here's why the county should be let out and you should be dealing with the town.
That is correct, and we have had, I've brought before you or informed you of, and recently, a situation like that where someone tripped and fell on the sidewalk, on Estero Boulevard, construction. Add to the, and they sued everyone, and we have at least 2 or 3, if not maybe 4 or 5, cases going through the system where that's the fact pattern, and so far we have been successfully able to assert and argue that we're not responsible. It's not our road. We don't have liability for it, and the courts have agreed with us, or frankly in some instances the plaintiff has said, yeah, we're going to go after the county. If we enter into an ILA, that transfers that some of that responsibility for some of those components and the liability. Again, potentially different outcome.
Right. I think we're getting into the weeds here with the legal discussion. I think the basic question before us today is, before we can move forward with all of this, is are we going to go with the amber or the white? I think if we can come up with a consensus among the 5 of us here this morning on which way to go, then we can proceed to move forward on execution of whatever our plan is. Then we move it on to the county. So what I'm hearing so far is, and I'm sorry, Dan, but what I'm hearing so far is the majority is thinking amber, if I'm not mistaken.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I would like to add, not just about the liability, but we have to look at, everyone, including the people that I've talked to at the county, are very sensitive about the turtles, myself included. I don't want this to be construed that
No.
I'm doing anything against, it has nothing to do with that. We're all very
We're-
concerned
we're
about
not-
the environment.
We're not taking it that way. We're not
We also
taking,
have to be concerned, though, about the residents and the visitors that are here year-round. We also have to be considerate about the
doubt.
budget. I mean, we're potentially sending something that's going to cost $4.4 million. Someone's going to have to pay for. It's something that has to be considered. That's kind of why I was leaning towards the 1A, 1B solution, that if we could provide that to the county, let them weigh in on it. I just don't want to back us into a corner. The county's going to be able to say, this is what you want, we don't agree with it, you're on your own.
And the way I look at negotiation is, if you already go in with the second choice, you have no place to back up to. You don't start out a negotiation saying, well, I'll give you $500 or I'll give you $450 because the person's going to pick the $450. I mean, the $500.
I don't think that's a fair
I mean,
comparison. I don't think that's a fair comparison at all.
Well, our negotiation with the county has never been really super friendly. So I don't think we want to go in already with a second choice on the platter.
Well, I guess, Madam Mayor, are you saying that you're okay with telling the taxpayers of the island you're willing to spend $4.4 million, worst case scenario of their money, to have one solution without an option?
No, because we don't know what the cost is going to be yet.
We can only go by what they've presented to us.
And I have lots of questions about the accuracy of that information. I believe we only have one choice because of the various constraints that are placed upon us. And I'm willing to say that to any taxpayer who approaches me.
Well, and I would disagree with that because I think the MPO study that the county did, as well as our consultants, have told us that there are more than one options.
The MPO
With a properly
study-
shielded light,
The
you can
MPO
make it
study
work.
was based on a false question to start with. The people who did the MPO study were instructed to come up with the most cost-efficient solution, not the best solution.
Again, I go back to this is at the county level. Why do you think that was?
Because we didn't control that. We were trying to save money, so we went to the MPO to ask them to fund it, and once they got a hold of it, they did it the way they thought it should be done.
Fair enough. And again, I just want to reiterate, whatever the solution is, as long as we have the coverage that we need, I'm in favor of. I'm just trying to put the facts out there that it's not just one specific light that has to be used. If that was the case, we wouldn't be talking about this for 5 years. If that was the case, it would have already been done. It has been told that there are solutions, there are ways to make it work, choosing not to listen to those.
I think it's a couple of points that I have to disagree with. One is that you're saying it's like, you're speaking like it's our choice, what priority we give to the turtles versus the people. It's not. I mean, we are a small player in this. This is a county-owned road that's got jurisdiction by the FWC and by the DOT. And we also had to get FP&L on board unless we want to buy the entire project by ourselves. So the idea that we can put up shielded white light, which FWC said they would not support, it's kind of a red herring. It won't really, that's not a viable option. Because we don't get FWC approval, we don't get FDOT approval, and that's what the county goes by.
As of this morning, again, I went to the FWC website to look and to see if they recommended any specific light or excluded any specific light. And I'm by no means a turtle expert, but nowhere in that did it say anywhere that I could read that they would exclude a light. They gave suggestions of what lights could do if you didn't use certain lights, but I didn't see anywhere in there and said that they would not accept this light.
Then when the consultants were here last time, they said FWC would not support anything but an amber solution. That's what the consultant said here on the last meeting we had.
And again, I go back to, if the light source cannot be seen within the zones that you mentioned earlier, is FWC requirement needed? I still want to get an answer to that.
Well, that FWC, that's what their kind of business is. And it's not just if you can see the point source of the light, it's any glow.
If it affects it, we'll use that word. If it affects the area that you've spoken about, if it does not affect those areas, is FWC requirement needed?
Yeah, we're in the map that they put out about the wildlife affected areas, we are in that map.
All of Estero Boulevard.
Pretty much most of the island is. Anywhere where it's visible from the beach. But, right now, all these solutions are wider than what we have now, and we have to turn lights off the way we are now.
And I need someone to explain to me why for 5 years we've been debating this and wasting thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars if the decision has already been made that this is the only thing that will work.
And when we started this process several years ago, an amber solution wasn't even available from FPL. So things have changed during this process.
Yeah, but this solution, even what's approved now by FDOT is power hungry and very low lumens compared to what's available now. And if you want an insight into what the county would do, then this is the light that they're using for their project at Crescent Street, which is not on an FP&L pole. There's FWC, they got FWC certification for it. That's their choice. So the county's already looking at amber. No matter what people put, when they have a light that they're putting in, they're recommending amber, putting in amber.
Because of one light, I don't think I would draw that conclusion, but I guess I would ask my fellow council members here, what was your plan, or what is the plan? It sounds like amber is going to be the suggestion. And again, if the coverage is there, that's what's most important. The turtles are taken care of, our people are taken care of, people that ride their bikes, all that's the most important thing. We all agree on that. What is the plan to pay for it if the county tells us we're not going to pay for it? You're on your own.
But we haven't even entered into negotiation with the county about how much they will pay for. They've made a first offer, but we haven't even countered that yet.
It's yet to be determined.
It still doesn't mean you have to have it in the back of your mind. I mean, Roger,
I've got a number in the back of my mind.
yeah, well, I think we all have the same number, but
If I could just say just a couple of things, just watching the the correspondence between the consultant and FWC and reading the correspondence and studying the language, it's a fair concern, Dan. Is FWC, do they definitively say in their regs and in their website that amber's the only solution? They don't formally say it, but when they correspond with the town and with the consultants, it's very clear that all they will support is an amber solution. Without FWC's approval, I think we're spinning our wheels. The consultant at the last M&P, as Councilor Veach said, I asked him directly. They came up with, which they later denied was a recommendation, but their dual source, quote unquote, recommendation, which is no longer a recommendation. They said that would not be approved by FWC. And I heard it as Councilor Veach heard it, that FWC would not approve any solution that was not all amber. And it may be difficult to find it in their regs, but if that's what they're telegraphing to the town, I can't imagine how we could go another direction that would not be, that would not meet the approval of FWC. So I think we need to look at an all amber solution. I do think we also probably need to decide today whether it's going to be an FP&L solution or if the town's going to claim ownership of the issue. I've got some thoughts on that as well, but I think talk about the costs. There are going to be costs, but I don't know that we have any choice, A, and B, I think as we've just, again, through the colloquy we had last month with the consultants, they have no idea what the costs are going to be because they've not been able to tie down specifically what the solution is, who's going to control that solution, whether it be the town or FP&L, and what the county's portion is going to be, and which technology we're going to use with respect to amber, because one of the really potentially positive suggestions or solutions for amber has not formally been approved by FP&L to therefore be eligible for their tariff. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but until we begin to drill down some direction in terms of where the town's going to go, it's difficult to get some more granular assessment on what the actual costs are. So I'm comfortable with the all amber solution. I think it makes sense for the island. I think with the new amber technology coming out, it can address a lot of the public safety concerns that have been raised, and again, also provide a uniform solution for the entire island year round.
I think we know where Councilman Veach is saying. I believe we're in the same same arena. And I'm sorry, you're on the losing end of this, but I share your concerns. I too am very concerned about the pedestrians and the visitors out there, our own people and our visitors. I've been assured more and more as this process has gone on that these amber lights actually provide the level that safe. That's what the professionals are telling me. I also share your concern about this thing dragging on for 5 years. I'll tell you right now, it's not going another 5. We're going to settle this thing one way or another. So there is the consensus. I agree with my other members that for to expedite this thing, we have to get it off go. And the beginning of that process is determining whether it's amber or white light. It's going to be amber. So that's the start of the process. Hopefully we can move it along from there. Then get something together for the county, and then we'll sit down and really see how this process is going to proceed.
Mr. Mayor? Sorry.
I was just going to ask a question, and that is, I think an important part of this process is entering into negotiation to communicate our wishes to the county. And I guess my question to my fellow council members is what your preference is on that. My preference, just to let everybody know, I think that we need to appoint a point person from the council who, with Roger, conveys our wishes and does negotiation with the county. All 5 of us can't do it. It would seem that we should have a point person from the council for that process like we have in the past. But that's just my point of view. I'm interested in the perspectives on that.
I think the next steps are important, Madam Vice Mayor, and I think one of the significant decisions we're going to have to make is whether this is going to be, and the town manager is going to have to give us your recommendation on this, but as to whether this is going to be an FP&L solution or if the town is going to decide to take ownership of this lighting system in conjunction with the county, and particularly as it references the crosswalks. And is that something we should decide as well today, Mr. Town Manager?
Well, my thinking was partially in line with what the Vice Mayor started to say and what you're saying, Councilman Adderholt, and that is that what is the next step? So the next step could be one of several things. It could be I call the county and tell them, perhaps, someone on the council calls our district representative from the county commission and tells them the outcome of this meeting. Secondary approach could be with or without a letter. Third approach could be with or without a resolution of the council saying, our decision, this is our expectation of the county, and communicating it that way. So those are the typical approaches.
Are you concerned that what we've decided today is still a little bit premature? And with respect to, we've decided an all amber solution. We have one amber solution that's included in the FP&L tariff, which we could hit right away. It's already approved, but it's not the best amber solution. We've got another potential solution with Visionaire Light that's, I think I heard during the correspondence, and I think you can confirm this, that FP&L's already started to look at to see if they're going to include it on their list of items under their tariff, to be included under the tariff. And do we need to give the county a little more direction, or are we just going to say, hey, we decided all amber? It seems like there's going to need, and we'd like to have an FPL solution. We'd like the FPL solution to be a Visionaire Light. How granular does the recommendation need to be? It seems like it ought to be a little bit more granular than just saying, hey, we think it's going to be all amber. Now the ball's in your court, when they've already told us that they're only going to do the crosswalks. It just seems like we have to have more direction.
Well,
I think more specificity. I think.
Yeah, well, I think you're there's a one level that above what you just said, Councilman Adderholt. That is, you're of the belief that this is Lee County's road, and they're responsible for the safety of the vehicles, pedestrians, the residents, the visitors, and everyone else. Then our highest level would be, this is your road, we're giving you our input, all things being equal, this is what we would like to see. Please get it done. So that's the highest level.
Can I tell you?
Yeah, and then you can go down from there, but as you go down from there, how wide the town's wallet will be opened will be proportional to how directive and you are with respect to that. So more direction, specific granular direction we give them, I suspect there'll be a correlation to how wide our wallet will be open. But that's up to you all to decide.
Have they, and again, this is all open still to negotiation to some extent, but one of their representatives, maybe not at the highest level, has said to us that particular road fits in a particular category of roads for the county that warrants only X amount of lighting. We want a much higher level. And we've said, well, if that's the case, we'll help with the crosswalks and you're on your own if you want that higher level. Haven't they already communicated that, or do you still think that's up for discussion?
Well, I believe that's like, the analogy in my mind would be, you'd be saying that anyone wearing a blue shirt gets free lunch today because you're wearing a blue shirt. They've set that level. There's nothing, the fact of the matter is that road, irrespective of its geographical limit, conditions, is what they're using for their argument, serves as an arterial road because and I know and they know that people are using that as an alternate route, not just a road for the local people to use to get from place to place. It's being used as a road for people going from Bonita to the other side of the island and to San Carlos Island and elsewhere as a shortcut. Therefore, how the road's physically being used contradicts what they're saying. They're looking at the physical, it has this number of lanes and therefore it qualifies as this style of road. It's not really, in my opinion, it's their road. They're responsible for the safety of the road. And to the extent that the town wants to help them out by saying, look, the inverse situation will contribute X towards this, but at the end of the day, it's really your problem to fix. Really, in my mind, the way that this should roll out. But if you want to take a different position, of
Oh,
course
oh,
we can.
I'd like to say, I think you're getting somewhere here. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're talking about a negotiating position, because I happen to think you're correct. I don't think, I mean, technically, the road may fall into a particular category, but because of its unique nature, for the reasons you stated, plus the additional tourist dollars that are generated for the county, it's a very unique road, and I think we do have an argument to make that they have a higher role to play. So that in and of itself is a strategy, and I'm open to that strategy. I don't take issue with what you said.
I would concur too, because, if you just look at the difference between north of Estero and then south of that intersection and the amount of traffic, that north of Estero represents local traffic. Going south, then you get that added traffic for through. And I was out pre-dawn on a bike ride, thanks to jet lag, and there's a lot of construction traffic, people already driving on the road at 7 o'clock in the morning. They're not going to the beach. They're not locals going to the grocery store. It's a county road, and then the outside, the outsize economic value that we bring the county, the tax dollars that we generate for the county, and a lot of the people that are on this road, they are not our constituents, but they are the county's constituents onto the road. So there's a lot of arguments to be made to why they should support this.
I had, this is probably a good time to tell you. I had lunch last week with Commissioner Sandelli, a couple of hours. And we discussed a wide range of subjects, this one being the major subject. And I said to Ray, we have to bring this to a head. It's been going on way too long. He agreed. And I said, we're going to be bringing forward recommendations to you. And then we have to get into a room and sit down and decide how we're going to proceed. And he agreed. So this is in his mind already, and they're actually waiting for us to come forward. So as soon as, and now we have a bit more direction. I mean, they already know. They already described again their cooperation with the lighting up the crosswalks. And I've lightly but firmly said that's not enough. It's not enough. And for all the reasons that have just been described here as to why. Number one being because it's a county road, not our road. So we went around and around, but he was very amenable to the discussions here. And I reminded him that, as I always do, I thanked him for the road, for the job itself. All extremely pleased with the progress that's been made and the improvements that have been made, but the job's not complete. It's not complete, and it's not complete until the lighting is done. And that's where they have to help us out. So he's on board with that, and so it's just a matter of getting together in a room, the powers to be, and working out the details. And I don't think, maybe I'm a little too optimistic, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think they're going to want to help us, and I'm quite confident of that. So, I mean, I think that should be the plan. The plan should be to move forward with recommending. My suggestion would be to make contact again with Commissioner Sandelli, let him know what happened here at today's discussion, then follow up with a letter after that to the county, documenting everything that we've done and how we envision this moving forward.
With your permission, Mayor, though,
Yes, sir.
I do think we have to at least discuss the question that Councilman Underhill brought up. It's about town versus FP&L systems. Because I do think that, there's honestly a lot of the pricing and stuff. I don't know how much faith I have in what they're presenting or how accurate it really is. And then if we are going to go with a town-owned system, are we pretty much then assuming ownership of the thing and being in a much worse bargaining position?
It seems strategically, if we go the route that we've just been discussing, encouraging the county to up their contribution to this process, it seems like the less granular we are at this point might be to our advantage, because it gives the county additional options. They can determine, how they want to work with FP&L. We do want to have some input in to make sure that Amber solution is adequate, and it is utilizing the most innovative technology currently on the market. But I don't know why the county wouldn't do that. It's in their interest to do that.
Exactly.
If I may, just to go back to something that you had, first I want to say I will join you in the amber, because as I said before, I think that whatever the uniform, it needs to be uniform, whatever comes out of this room. And as long as it's the coverage that we need to protect everyone involved, I'm 100% for it.
Thank you.
So, that being said, to go back to what you had mentioned earlier, Councilor Adderhall, as far as, I don't think it's necessarily necessary to give them a specific visionary or CRE or a specific fixture. I think it's more important to discuss, and maybe the people from MRF can help with this, because I sensed some hesitation when there was talk between the lower lumen output from the visionary to the CRE. So I don't want to have that uniform voice go out and say we want to use, and we'll just use the visionary because that's what's in the packet. The 12,900 lumen output versus the CRE, which is 6,100. That's a huge difference. So in order to get the coverage that we need, you're going to need more fixtures to be able to have that, which is in a sense going to cost more. So I think a good plan would be to decide what that lumen output should be, the maximum that would be suffice to work for everyone, not necessarily get into the weeds as to which specific manufacturer, because there may be, as they say, there's hundreds of them out there that make these lights that would fit. It doesn't have to be this visionary. I think to figure out what that lumen output is going to be, the ceiling that we're comfortable with, or that MRF or everybody else is comfortable with, because that's a big disparity between 6 and 12. If it's something in the middle, or if 12 is fine, if that's the ceiling that we want to go, and at least we can give it to them, then they can decide, or we can all decide what manufacturer you're going to go with. If it's the higher lumen output, we have less poles needed, less fixtures needed, the cost is much less. So I think that's a better strategy, in my opinion, as far as going forward to the county, not necessarily specifically recommending one fixture.
I'm comfortable with that. That makes sense.
I also agree because, as the consultant said, we're not the only one who's in this situation. Or you mentioned Fort Lauderdale in the answer to the questions. It seems like that certainly from an FP&L standpoint, they're not going to want us to choose one vendor and Fort Lauderdale to have another and somebody else have another, even though they're similar specifications. So, and also the answer to the question was, they said the glare that was the limiting factor in the amber that we were talking about was due to the design of the fixture, not necessarily because of the lumens. Answers the question. So, but I do think you're just coming up with a specification, a minimum specification for the amber, knowing we want to minimize the number of additional poles put in, but then let the fixture that's actually approved be dictated by the market.
Roger, is this some sort of project where they'd want to bang it all out in one shot, or could it be phased in over time?
Well, I think a
And
couple of
and
things.
first of all, before you get started, you and I both know the money is available to do this right away. There's no reason to spread it out over time.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So Councilor Veach mentioned town-owned system versus non-town-owned systems. So if it were a town-owned system, let's just get that sort of off the table if you give the wording. That means that we would own it and maintain it, and we could do that through a company who would be glad to build it for us and finance it, and get it to a sort of a monthly payment, if you will, but it would be I think fairly expensive and frankly beyond the means of the town right now. So while that is an option, I don't know that it's really a viable option for us right now. We would have to postpone and cancel a whole lot of other things that we're trying to do to be able to do the lighting. So assuming that we ask Lee County to step up and provide safety lighting on their road, I think we should let them develop the solution that they want to develop. They've already come here and said that they have a certain candle foot power that they know is the appropriate lighting metric for the road. So they know what that is. You tell them you want amber, and let's see where that discussion goes. If they come back and they say that, well, we're going to use a GE bulb, and you say, well, we really prefer a Sylvania bulb, then we could talk about the cost differential between those two bulbs and decide whether the town wants to, is that important to the town to pay for the Sylvania bulb? But, we have to be careful we don't start negotiating against ourselves.
You know, I would agree with a lot of what the town manager just said. I would not be in favor of supporting town-owned option in this lighting. I think it's far too expensive. It goes back to that liability issue that we talked about at the beginning. It goes back to the negotiation. So now you're essentially sending mixed messages that, you know, maybe we want to pay for it, maybe we don't want to pay for it. I think the town-owned option should not be considered, in my opinion.
Just to chime in on that, I see it as a highly unlikely option. It would be wonderful that we could control it. Cost-wise, I see it to be high. I don't want to take it completely off the table at this point because there are so many unknowns still floating around.
I think it's, I don't think it's a good option for the town. FP&L with all their challenges is a subject matter expert on this issue. Got economies of scale, and they also have mutual assistance agreements with other communities and other states. Should we have a hurricane, they can triage these areas like our island and get the lights and the electricity back up and running, where we would have a lot more challenges as an individual entity. So obviously we have to keep everything on the table, but to me that doesn't seem like a very good option for the town to own and operate its own lighting system.
I concur.
I guess my question is, I didn't hear anybody opine on whether we're going to select our point person.
I would be more, I speak to Commissioner Sandelli every week about this. I would be more than happy to be the one that speaks to him now that it appears that we have a direction. If that's okay with my council members, I'd be more than happy to do it.
I would actually recommend Councilman Adderholt because of his experience with utilities.
My help has been great in narrowing down our options, but in terms of, we have an electrical engineer and a lighting expert on this council, and I would yield to their experience and knowledge on lighting. I just don't have the background in lighting to get into the minutia on this, and I know Councilor Allers and Councilor Veach does, so I just don't think I'm the best option. The mayor's already started negotiations, it sounds like, and it's all very positive. But I just don't think when you get into the granular details of the solution, listening to both Councilor Allers and Councilor Veach discuss, they clearly have a background that I don't have, and so I'm comfortable with one of them, particularly if Councilor Allers has already offered to do it. He's on board with the Amber solution. I'm comfortable with that happening. But thank you, though. I appreciate it.
My understanding is it was to let where the direction of this meeting went, and to let them know that the council has made a decision on what we would prefer, not necessarily have anything to do with the negotiation at this point.
Well, I think we do need to have one person so that we don't accidentally send mixed messages that our mayor would communicate one thing maybe and you would communicate another. I just know that it's been a tradition of this council in the past on issues like this to select a point person. And because of the sunshine law, you really have to be careful, and that's why I suggest it. And I'm not picking anybody. If you want to volunteer, I don't have any issues with that. I just think it's an important thing to make sure we don't send mixed messages by having more than one person do.
I think it's a good idea.
Well, I'll tell you, these discussions at our level, who we're going to be meeting with, they don't want to be bogged down with this minutia that we're going through right now. They don't want to hear that. All they want to hear is, what do you want? How much is it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? That's what it's all about. So, I think you can sit down with them and talk to them about that, then I would say, okay. But if you're going to sit down and talk to him about lumens and this and that and everything, he doesn't want to hear all that. He has people that want to discuss all that.
I assure you, I don't want to get in the weeds there's, as I said before, there was a wise man that once told me there's money in confusion. I don't want to get into the confusion.
This is all about.
This is about uniformity. This is about we all have one voice. This is what we need.
It also sounds like the mayor's already been doing some negotiation too.
I'm not fighting to assume that, but that's the lack of a better word, strategy right now. It's not It's not to negotiate all this. We're looking at the big picture now. Let everybody else worry about the details of it. The big picture is, do you agree that it's your road? Do you agree that you're responsible for lighting it? And if so, what's your participation going to be in this process? That's what it's all about right
I
now.
think too, some of the points that were made before is that, we have this outsized financial impact on the county. These are county constituents that are using the road more than our people are.
Of course, of
And,
course.
that the rating on the road, we're a 2-lane, 30-mile-an-hour road. But that rating does not really fit the risks that there are from all the congestion we have with pedestrians and bicycles and other things that are not counted in their formula.
No, it all gets down to the real big question. Estero Boulevard is our main street in our town. It's our main street. Wherever you were from, you had a main street. That's our main street. It's not owned by us. We don't own it. The county owns it. So anytime we have to do something out there, we have to go hat in hand to the county to do. I suggested years ago that the town should own Estero Boulevard. It didn't go over too well. It's probably better that we didn't at the time because now the improvements have been made. But it's something to consider for a future council is to assume as ownership of Estero Boulevard now that all the improvements have been done, and then start making all these decisions on our own from here on forward. That's something for a future, maybe this council, maybe a future council to consider. Putting that out there, but
Yeah, I understand. It's the same thing like with the Public Safety Committee. So much of what they talk about has to do with Estero Boulevard because that's where a lot of the risk is. And the things they want to do from bus benches to lighting, it's on someone else's property.
reversing lanes to moving this, all kinds of things that we could have done over the last 30 years to improve our traffic situation, which we can't do because we don't own the road. And any time those sort of discussions were brought forward, they were poo-pooed and discounted right away. When you have the road, you can do those sort of things, but that's a much bigger topic. But again, it is the county's road. It has to be lit. And I think you all know where I stand on that. It's a matter of who, I don't really care. I'd be happy to do it, Dan, if you're happy to do it, that's fine with me, whatever the council's pleasure is, but that has to be the message. That's the message.
It's important to put it through forcefully, I think, too.
Right?
We made a decision. My offer is still there. I'll be more than happy to do it.
And with all due respect, I think maybe it'd be, in my opinion, it'd be better to have our mayor do it too, because he is the mayor. And he's in a loop that we're not all necessarily in. That's my opinion.
When I took over this position as mayor, I've never considered myself more than a councilman. And that goes back to my first 2 terms as well. Never. Ceremonial in nature. The position of mayor has been elevated over the years somehow in the town here. And people think more of the mayor than he actually is or she is. But regardless of that, that's the perception that's there. And you are the titular head of the town. So the titular head wants to be sent to their titular head, which will not be the case in this case, but that's the way it's perceived. And if it's your wish, I'd be happy to do it again, but I'm not lobbying either way.
I will be more than happy to yield my offer to you, Mr. Mayor.
Everyone else all right with that? I don't want to wrestle it from you, Dan. Offer you another donut.
This isn't about me or you, Mr. Mayor.
That's
This
right.
is about the good of the island.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
We've made our decision. I think it's important to streamline this and move it along as fast as possible.
Very good. All right. We all set then? Any further discussion on this? If not, we'll move on.
This is nothing that needs a vote. Have consensus on the amber. Is that enough going forward, or do we need have a resolution?
I think that,
Can't vote here.
the force of a vote would be good for moving forward, and we'll put something on the next agenda.
Sir,
Just a reminder that no formal action can be taken at workshops. We do things through consensus, but if the consensus is to take certain action, we'll then bring it back to the next agenda.
okay, on a 5-minute break, you want to keep going? Okay. Next one is foot of the bridge landscaping. Town manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I believe it was Councilor Adahal asked the question, what were the potential costs of the maintenance of the foot of the bridge design that FDOT shared with you at a recent meeting? And we work with them, and they've developed an estimate, which they indicate could be plus or minus 20%, but that range is in the attached sheet. It's been provided to you as part of your agenda. And of course, you may remember that the DOT advised you that the contractor who installs the landscaping would be responsible for the first 2 years, the establishment period.
What in the sheet, is it just this 2-year establishment period cost?
So they have an establishment cost. If you go through it, it's total establishment maintenance cost they're estimating. And then if you flip the page over, I believe,
No, those are the plants.
yeah,
The first page,
yeah,
the
the first page, I'm sorry.
way I read it is the 190 number is the construction and the 2 years maintenance combined. It's the 190. Am I right?
So we'd be responsible for the 19.8.
Potentially ongoing, plus or minus 20%.
And Roger, is it your understanding that the state would not go forward with this vegetation project if we didn't assume the maintenance after 2 years? Is that what they intimated?
Well, my interpretation of what they said, or inferred, I don't know if they directly said anything, was that they need a local partner to assume the maintenance responsibility. They have had informal conversations with Lee County. County has rejected this as another sort of landscape enhancement, and FDOT, and if they can't find a alternate sponsor, would just put in ground cover of some type. So that's what they're trying to do, is through their plans, whether or not they should plan for the enhanced landscaping that was shared with you at that meeting, or should they consider an alternate?
That's how I heard it, Roger. And I have to say, we've talked, and previous councils have talked, how special it is coming over that bridge. And, I don't particularly like the tactics by the state here on this, but at the same time, the reality, if that's the reality of the situation, for us to have a positive first impression and to maintain the beautification of that experience coming over the bridge, the first thing people see coming over that bridge, that seems pretty important to me. I would be very supportive of that. It also seems like, to me, I was a little concerned with the state's proposal with respect to no handrails, no utilizing vegetation to channel pedestrian traffic to the crosswalks. And maybe if we did take over the vegetation and we saw opportunities to utilize vegetation in a way that looks nice, channel people to crosswalks, particularly if we've assumed control of the maintenance, that maybe give us additional controls, to the mayor's point earlier, of our own destiny there. It just seems like if we drop the ball on this and it's just going to be plain Jane coming over that bridge, it seems like a real missed opportunity for the town. That's my gut anyways. I'm certainly open to other thoughts on it.
I agree with Mr. Adderholt.
My question would be, well, they were very clear, I think, from what I understood from FDOT's presentation, that the county has said that they don't want to have any kind of maintenance agreement with them, but they were open to us doing it. Now, whether that means that it's an interlocal between us and the county, as far as the county pays for it, but we maintain it, I hate to keep beating on it, but I go back to that liability issue, where I was really, really concerned when they talked about some of the things that you just brought up, Councilmember Adholt, about the guardrails and where the car goes through every single time by the ice cream shop and all the crosswalks. That, to me, that scares me a little bit, that it's not a matter of if an accident's going to happen there, it's when it's going to happen. And we assume this maintenance agreement, one, this is a question for John, is it possible to assume a maintenance agreement, not assume the liability? Is there a way that can be written in a contract? Or if we take over this maintenance agreement and an interlocal with the county and they pay for it, that...
While John's thinking about his answer, let me suggest this. We could put the shoe on the other foot, and we could say that we want this, and we'll pay the county to maintain it, let them keep the liability, and we just write them a check. So, they always propose that to us, and we could just flip it around and propose it to them, say, look, this is important to you, this is important to us, it should be beautiful. We've always talked about how important Fort Myers Beach is a tourist destination and how it benefits Lee County. And this is the right thing to do. We understand that, we can't ask you to do everything without offering to participate, so we'll participate. We'll pay you. You do it.
That is an alternative. All we can do is offer and see what response the county provides.
One thing that kind of comes out, the little thing in this, in the way this is written up, is it looks like we're putting in 1/10 of an acre of grass. At the same time, we're contemplating spending money taking grass out along Estero and putting in ground cover. So it seems like the design itself is a little bit counter to what we're doing the rest of the island, a little bit maintenance heavy.
Well, again, that was FDOT's proposed design. I believe you gave a comment to them about the design already, Councilor Veach, and we can add a further comment about perhaps not using sod and using some other type of ground cover that would require less maintenance.
Getting back to your point, Jim, about modifying the landscape at a future date. Years ago, with part of my tongue in my cheek, I proposed in the center lane down there to stop the pedestrians from crossing, planning it Bougainvillea and Spanish Bayonet. And if what I'm hearing is correct, we're almost back to that now. So it may come to fruition yet. But anyhow, what does anyone agree with Roger about his proposal to the county to let them maintain it? We'll pay them to do it, or does that seem kind of
Just wonder what we're going to them on the lighting issue.
Yeah.
It seems like for us to own this and I know the maintenance issue is going to be a cost, but that's such a key part of our island. We have some, if we're doing the maintenance, then we have some control, as Councilor Veach said, about the appropriate vegetation selection, how we design it. As Councilor Aller said, to help for safety reasons and for pedestrian efficiency. There's things we could do if we had the maintenance that I think we'd have a much greater stake in as opposed to the county. I just think we're certainly, that's such a sensitive part of our island, not just visually, but also from a practical standpoint with respect to traffic congestion and safety. For us to have some increased ownership seems appealing to me, but
Well, I think what you're saying is, and I agree with you, is pride of ownership. When you own it, you take care of it, you keep it up, and who wants it to look better coming on to the island than ourselves?
Right.
Ourselves, and it certainly would be a benefit to everyone else that's coming to enjoy our island. But we would always be enjoying it, and I agree with you. I think, Roger, it'll be a little more for us to take on and so forth, but I think that that's
Mr. Mayor, I'm not really concerned about the doing the maintenance per se. I'm sharing Councilor Al's concern about the liability at that location. There's a location that's, potentially dangerous for pedestrians in town. Multitude of crosswalks and traffic we have at that interchange.
That's a fair point, Roger. Did the town attorney opine by us assuming the maintenance of the landscaping? Do we actually assume all liability in that area?
And it's all subject to interlocal agreement and to negotiation. Again, myself historically, when we have accepted those responsibilities from the county or other, agency, we also try and shift the liability. I can tell you that when it's a little bit different with FDOT and dealing, we have a series of agreements that get renewed periodically with FDOT for the maintenance of certain of these areas. And as the manager points out, we just simply pay our fair share for that cost under those agreements. And FDOT is responsible and maintains the liability. I think the manager's suggestion is we try and do something similar to that with the county. However, if it's the desire of this council to assume essentially ownership of those improvements, it changes the dynamics of that conversation.
And just to further be clear, just so everyone's on the same page, I'm sorry to interrupt. The current plan is that FDOT will be turning that part of Estero Boulevard over to Lee County once the construction is done. So it won't be FDOT's property any longer, it'll be Lee County's property. So all our experience in terms of how things fall out with shared use of Estero Boulevard would be applicable in that case. And to just reemphasize the point that means that handrails and some of the other things that this council has talked about as needed safety precautions to channel pedestrians won't come into play in all likelihood.
Thing I was going to add to what Mr. Heron was saying is that you also have to look at a causation issue. If someone sues you because an accident happened there, it has to be related to the maintenance for us to be liable. If they were hit because the crosswalk was poorly designed or poorly placed, we don't take that on just because we took on the maintenance.
That's a fair point.
I think we're all in agreement, or we're mostly in agreement here about on the landscaping after the 2-year period. Can we move forward with that subject to an agreeable agreement with the county and the state as to whose liability is whose and so forth and so on?
If that's the consensus of the council at this point, that's what we'll do.
That sound like a reasonable way to go?
Previously indicated I was in agreement.
Okay.
I'm a little confused. Are we not willing to at least ask the county if they're willing to pay the fee? We can maintain it, but they pay for the cost of the maintenance? Are we just going to assume that entire?
Well, we sort of already have assumed the maintenance of Estero Boulevard already in terms of the landscaping. So we're just adding a very sensitive part, but we're adding on to already obviously the Lee County gave us a nice chunk of change to at least help offset those costs for a while. Maybe that's a negotiation as well. Maybe Lee County would be willing to help initially with some of those costs, and or just as they did on Estero Boulevard, the rest of Estero Boulevard. So I guess my point is it's not inconsistent for us, or it's not going to be odd for us to be in charge of the maintenance of vegetation along Estero, because we already are for the preponderance of the road. This is just that additional piece, which is particularly sensitive and critical to the town. But I'm all for negotiations that cede a liability issue. If we could have the town assume the county assume some liability, that certainly would be desirable as well. Maybe that's the negotiating chip. I'm not, I'd have to defer to the attorney on that. It's a fair point, fair question.
I'm all for the town making it, we want it to look nice. It's the first thing you see when you come over the bridge. So I'm all for making it look nice. I just pause when it comes to that liability, and I understand Madam Vice Mayor's point as far as being in the crosswalk, but if a car can go through a guardrail into an ice cream shop, it can certainly go over some hedges into the middle of that grassy knoll there. So, you know, it's all legalities, and I'm by no means a lawyer. It's just a matter of how much does the town want to assume as far as liability goes?
Well, to that point, and to the vice mayor's point, I think an issue is, well, out through the landscaping because it was too high and I couldn't see where the road went. The question then becomes, was it a design defect that the road was improperly designed, or is it a maintenance issue that the foliage wasn't trimmed down enough to maintain the site triangle that otherwise would have been required? Those are issues of fact that will be mitigated, but again, by assuming responsibility for maintenance, there is going to be an enhanced liability possibility.
So with liabilities, you know, did you cause an accident or contribute to an accident, and do you have to then pay damages? Then there are also just the fact that there will be a cost to the town to defend us, to try to prove the point that we aren't responsible. So that's there. Whereas I would think, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but it's just a lot easier to say, it's not our road, it's not our responsibilities to get out of a case versus having to participate in a case and having to get to the point where we could prove to a judge or a jury that how we were made did not contribute to the accident.
At the risk of belaboring this, we have already assumed the maintenance of the vegetation along the most of Estero already. Did that liability shift to the town then?
There potentially would be a shift or potential shift depending upon what the allegations are, what caused the accident.
And what improvements we make.
And yeah.
So we're controlling the improvements there so that to the extent that we make an improvement that contributes to an accident, obviously we'd be liable. But if we don't, by virtue of not making an improvement at a location or not contributing to an accident, then we're fine. But that along the Cerro is very different, I believe, than there with the multitude of crosswalks that you saw in that diagram.
Gotcha.
I think too, it seems to me that, you know, it's not our design, the landscape's not our design, the crosswalks aren't our design, the road's not our design, and it seems like inherently there's a very limited potential liability for maintenance unless we really just don't maintain it. Just as long as we don't negotiate an interlocal agreement that makes us take a disproportionate amount of liability.
Right, and you never divest yourself under Florida law. Local government can't divest themselves 100% for potential liability because Florida is a comparative negligence state where it's a percentage who's responsible for the liability. Not to belabor the point, you know, part of the answer to this discussion is, you know, that is a function of ensuring the improvements. And so if there were such claims made against the city, for the most part, very general terms, it would be covered by an insurance policy and would be, our insurance carrier would appoint outside counsel to represent the city's interest. There certainly is a cost associated with that. There's a cost of participating at the staff level and our level, interacting with outside counsel. But there is a reduced direct cost. Obviously, you can't guess what an ultimate judgment might be and whether it exceeds the limitations of our policy. But the general rule that it, you know, that's why you have liability insurance.
You can use all this discussion for your CLEs for continuing education. Okay, anything else?
No, we'll bring back an item for the next agenda. As I believe I'm pretty sure I understand where everyone stands.
Better man than
You do,
me.
because I'm a little confused still.
What I'm hearing is that that town is willing to responsibility for the maintenance. So you're hearing that?
And I do think to the point, you know, there's the vegetation provides an encouragement to stay on the crosswalks through that area without having a hard structure or nasty.
Okay. The last
Is that
item.
correct? What I stated is correct, right?
Yes, I was nodding my head.
Oh,
I
yes,
should
yes,
speak out
sir.
loud.
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
the record.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Thanks.
I don't even think the new sound system will pick up nods.
Okay, the last item is or next to last, is the amendment to the town code regarding the prohibition of plastic straws.
I can, currently, the city code prohibits the use or the distribution of plastic straws in a generic sense. The MRF has had a series of conversations involving our staff liaison where they have suggested modifying the current regulations, which is an outright prohibition on the distribution of plastic straws, to be modified to allow for or the distribution of biodegradable straws. It's the reverse, that there's new technology out there that some of these straws that otherwise appear to be plastic or other type of materials are in fact biodegradable, and if they meet that criteria, then they can be used in the town of Fort Myers Beach, as opposed to the current outright prohibition on plastic straws.
And just to be clear, because I went through a lot of these things with Murph, is that plastic is more of a property as opposed to a chemical makeup. So plastics can be made from a lot of different materials. And they also are classified as how they break down. So there are things like, it says compostable, it could be marine compostable, which means it has to be subjected to a considerable amount of heat. The criteria we're using is a marine biodegradable, which means it'll break down in water. And there is a certain composition made, and there are multiple manufacturers that have a product that is proven to break down in a marine environment. And that's what we're particularly wanting to allow, because they're just better straws. And and even the paper straws, they made a very good argument that the paper straws contain paper, but then a lot of glue and other materials, which are not necessarily degradable. So these even have some advantages in environmentally to paper straws.
My question to John is that we were given an updated version, and what I see that has changed, if I'm reading this correctly, is section 14-153. Part that was suggested about the Federal Trade Commission's green guides is not in there anymore. Is there a reason? Can you tell me the reason for the change?
Because the definition of biodegradable mirrors what is in the FTC regulation.
Okay, so you just didn't cite regulation.
So, there is a citation to the regulation in the whereas clause on.
You took it out of the,
Took it out, correct.
okay. Other than that, there aren't any substantial changes. Well, it seems like something we need to move forward with.
Counselor Veach, if you just indulge me, I think I get this, but is it fair to say we're in essence, because of changing technology, expanding the number of options for businesses who utilize straws on the beach?
Yes.
That's still environmentally sensitive?
It's an additional allowance, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Some are already
Already
being used
using
and
them.
contemplated use, yeah.
How does one enforce that? If you see those people using straws, they look like a regular plastic straw, but they're those fade straws.
They're a different color.
It's the color. It's all about color.
I think that's one way to identify, isn't that right?
But there's no straw police. That's going to enlighten me.
Good morning, everybody. Chad Schutz, environmental staff. I would just ask them for the manufacturer statements regarding biodegradability. You know, different manufacturers are going to have different colors. Different products may come online, but to verify that.
So
voluntary?
just the practical way that would be is if we couldn't tell that it's compliant with this code, as I believe you all know, is the way we do things, we issue a notice of violation. That person can come before the magistrate and prove so that they're not in violation, and they could do that by showing that the person they're purchasing straws from meet the criteria of the code.
Chad, from a practical standpoint with respect to enforcement, is this complaint-driven, or do you have to have a daiquiri at each of the establishments on the beach as you walk up and down the beach?
Well, that one you want to volunteer
Are
for.
you offering your services?
Yeah, I mean, I have had people bring me plastic straws from Subway, 7-Eleven, et cetera. You know, are you asking the enforcement of it, or are you asking why this ordinance was driven?
I was kind of
Asking what your
joking
favorite
around, but yeah.
beverage
Yeah, just kind of joking around, but just from a practical standpoint, do you have people that just call you and say a particular restaurant has a straw that might be problematic?
Sir?
Okay.
Generally, just again, because the public does consume these meetings to some extent, most of our code enforcement action, other than building without a permit, is done via the complaint process.
Has been pretty good compliance since we enacted the law.
Yes, because of
Fair.
well, I think it's been a lot easier because it was a clear disqualified, that this doesn't qualify. So this is adding a shade of gray to that, but I think we can work with it.
Efforts being made, more than it was in the past.
We have some excellent beach stewards and throughout the island who help us tremendously.
It's great. Okay. Anyone want to add anything to that? We'll just move this ordinance forward.
This doesn't mean that they can't, if they choose to still use paper straws. I know I've talked to some businesses that are concerned that these straws are much more expensive than they could still use paper straws if that's what they chose.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear, so if anyone was listening, they know.
Very good. Okay, the final item, as always, is agenda management. Anybody have anything they'd like to? I have a question, town manager and town attorney. I was approached, and council, you'll want to hear this. I was approached by a friend, constituent. He lives on Court Street. Where Court Street is. Know where Flamingo Street is? It goes into the beach, straight in the Flamingo Beach Access, where the old lunch box used to be and so forth. And the Flamingo Hotel in the corner and Coquina on the south corner. Anyhow, that goes right into the street, and off of that is Court Street, which is a little small lane, pretty much, just a few houses on it. And this lady approached me and she said she had the unanimous consensus of her neighbors, but they're tired of that name, Court Street. And what they'd like to do is name it Flamingo Court. She wants to change the name of the street. I told her, I don't have a problem with that. You can call it whatever you want, but I told her I would find out the process of changing the name of a street. Myers Beach. So I'm bringing that forward today to, I could have brought it up on a councilman item thing sometime, but I don't know whether that's put on a future agenda for an M&P or whether you want to just research it and come back at a later date with that. I don't know how you would handle that.
Well, we could advise you of the process to do it.
Yes.
Well, I'll work with John and the U.S. Postal Service and others just to check out what the process is to do that.
Okay.
Then we'll inform you of that, and based on what's required, you could decide whether you want to do it in this case or any future case.
Okay, great. It would be good to know the process.
I think that's really interesting, and if I could, it's sort of a somewhat similar. I have had queries over the last year, and quite honestly, my own personal query. We have an intersection on this island that I think is really cool, and it was intriguing when I first started visiting the island, and it's the intersection of Lazy Way and Easy Street.
Where we all want to end up.
Yes, which is near the laundromat. And a couple of years ago, the street sign disappeared, and I didn't know if that was a couple ruffians who took that as a souvenir or not, but I wondered if we could potentially figure out a way to put that street sign back up at some point, because it's such a cool
They're
intersection.
both town streets, yes.
Yes, sir, yeah.
I think it disappears regularly. I seem to remember that I've discussed this with Chelsea, and they are regularly replacing it.
That seems like one someone would It looks great in my, no, I'm
It's
just
such
saying.
such a cool intersection, and if there's a way to secure it even more securely, to at least with like, with everyone except the hardened criminals from stealing it, I just think that's it adds a lot of character to our town, and it's just a cool intersection. Anyways.
Probably the most photographed signs on the island. You see people taking pictures of it all the time.
Gone now for a couple of years, so, yeah.
Anything else for agenda management? Yes.
I had once brought up the blower issue. I don't see it on here.
So,
I thought we had consensus to take a look at it.
Well, that's,
Outlawed them, I think.
thank you, Madam Vice Mayor, for reminding me. We have the blowers here, both gas and electric powered. And after the meeting, if you all just want to hear the difference for yourselves, we'd be very glad to do a demonstration out in the back parking lot.
I'm not caring about the demonstration. I just wondered why it wasn't on agenda management.
Well, I guess my question is, to better understand the issue, do you want to hear a demonstration, or you just want to take up a discussion?
I have regular demonstrations on my street, so I don't need a demonstration. But if,
We ought to just double check, if you could, with your colleagues, with your counterpart in Sanibel. I thought I read that they just delayed the implementation of their ordinance another year because there's some kind of a shortage of electric. See that? Am I dreaming that? I thought
it could be that I missed that, but regardless, I just wanted to put it on agenda management so it doesn't get dropped.
I think it's, there's some issues with that that could be complicated.
We'll
and I
put it
think we
on
just
for the
need to be
next
aware of, but yeah.
MP, and we'll have the.
Again, it doesn't have to be on the next MMP. I'm not saying I'm in a hurry. It's just not on the page. That's, I wanted to make sure we didn't forget it by not having it on the page.
I can tell you we didn't forget it, but I'm sorry, it's not on the page.
That's all I'm asking.
In that similar vein, we've been talking about committee reorganization, which is not on the list here either. Just want to have the discussion, not that I'm advocating necessarily doing anything specific. I just want to hear what the other councilors have to say.
What was the item?
Committee reorganization.
And I agree with Mr. Veach. I think that would be good to put on a MMP very soon.
I've also been approached by a recent person to the beach, a recent constituent, who is very knowledgeable about devices that can get people to the beach easily, that maybe are have ADA issues, or she made a very good point about how a lot of people don't go to some of the beach accesses because they have no access to the beach. They like to try to stay in the north end where they can get to the beach a little bit easier. So she told me about these vehicles that there's, and I'm sorry I don't have all the information, but it's something that I'd like to add, if my council members will indulge me, to bring forward to staff to talk about potentially taking advantage of some of these programs that are out there to provide some sort of vehicle. When I say vehicle, it's essentially, we've all seen them, they're wheelchairs with the big balloon chairs.
We own them.
Right, but they're not accessible at the beach.
Oh, we do. We own handicapped beach
Yeah,
accessible wheelchairs.
we have some, and you could call, and we will bring, unlock them and bring them to you. We have them stored, we have two of them stored along the beach.
We own them.
I just started getting into it, so that's good news. I will get with you then afterwards, and I'll get her that information, because she'd like to get involved in that.
We had a whole thing about this in a previous council and allocated the money to buy them, and
Well, I apologize, I didn't know that. As I said, she had brought it to my attention, and I noticed that going to our beach access, that there was nothing readily there for someone that, if they were just coming and stopping, that they could access and take to the beach and enjoy the beach. So I think that was more of her point, not necessarily having them, but having the accessibility and not.
we also had beach vendors at the time say that they owned them and that they would, at that time, I don't know if they still are, they were allowing people to use them for free as a part of their service to the community, because they rented other beach chairs and things, so they provided, certain of the vendors, beach chair vendors, et cetera, own them, and at least in the past had been allowing people to use them for no charge.
That's great information. I'll get with staff then and put her in contact with staff.
I'm a little disappointed you weren't watching that particular meeting 5 years ago when that was discussed.
I may have missed that one.
It is a good point that maybe this is a good subject for one of our future press releases. Let people know, because having the chairs, if no one knows about them, really doesn't serve the purpose.
Good to remind people.
And right now, I'll say, hi, Jennifer, because I know she's listening to us.
That's all I had.
Very good. Anybody else have anything else? Else for the good of the order today? Not? We'll adjourn at 11:01.